Resilience is by definition the process or ability of an individual to adapt well in the face of adversity. It is also the building block of the marvelous story of a couple of strong and passionate volunteers and teachers, and the reason why you're now watching this video was the resilience to build up this vibrant community known as the European Youth Parliament. And one of the people that contributed to that greatly is Bettina Carr-Allinson, the co-founder of the EYP. But let's start from the basics. 30,000 participants in the EYP, 40 European countries, and more than 500 events on an annual basis. And yet the starting point was her vision.
It was a huge organization from nothing to getting 144 young people from all over Europe. And we didn't have anywhere to put them other than in host families. So we had to contact every single person in Fontainebleau to ask them, would you please take a delegate? And they said, what, a delegate? What for? And so we had to explain the whole thing, but they were very good and they had a lovely time there.
And did you actually imagine that the EYP would have gone so far?
It was in my vision to grow it always. And even before the EEC became the European Union, we already invited all the countries that were supposed to become future members of the EU. And so we were always working to extend the experience to other countries, to involve more young people. And the whole idea was basically to get the whole of Europe involved.
What EYP has done so far is that it has introduced the European Union and the European values to countries that are not member states, and some countries even outside of Europe. Did you ever imagine that it would amount to something like this?
Oh yes, we actually invited a Russian delegation to one of the first international sessions. We paid for everything for them to come and experience what EYP and democracy was all about. But and I went to St. Petersburg and talked to lots of people trying to involve Russia, but it was too early. So hopefully it's working now.
Reading from Bettina's overview, there are some milestones in the history of the EYP that ought to be remembered.
Yeah, it was a historic event because it was the very first time, that young people had used the Senate. And I remember visiting the president of the Senate at the time, together with Daphne Caminita, who is from Milan, who was our academic director. And he said, why are you here? So I said, well, I would like to invite the European Youth Parliament to have a session in the Senate. And he just looked at me and he couldn't believe what I was saying. He said, Madam, do I hear that you want me to give the Senate, which has been the privilege of the Roman senators for over 2,000 years, and you want me to give it to a group of teenagers? So I just said, well, there's always a first time, isn't there? And he started laughing, and he said, that's fine then.
Our starting point was the concept of resilience, but how do you handle resilience when your idea is brutally swiped by the very same people that should support you?
People want to take your idea away from you. And the strangest thing was that before the first session, I had written to the person who was running for the French presidency, written him a letter saying, would he support the initiative? Because I thought if I have his support and he becomes president, then some doors will be opened for fundraising. Now, about a week later, I hadn't heard back from him. On the 8 o'clock news, and he had just come up with a fantastic idea for young people. He was going to create a European Youth Parliament. Can you imagine that? And then all my friends in Fontainebleau called me and said, he's stolen your idea, he's pinched it up, what is he doing? And I was met by one of his adjutant, a sort of secretary, but quite a high up person. And they told me to forget the whole idea. And thank goodness he wasn't elected, because I don't know what would have happened if he had. But I was so glad I won, and he didn't get his way.
There are things that EYP scored that have been around for quite some time now, regardless of how much it changed or evolved through all these years. These traditions have been passed down through generations of EYPers, most of which are central to EYP's core values. How did, for instance, a first session day look like back in the day? What were the games played? What were the songs that were sung?
The first 2 days when delegates arrived, they were actually sent to a place where they had team building with instructors and to get to know each other really well, to do exercises, which meant a sort of trust fall was included. We also had a zip line and they flew from trees down, and I can still hear one girl saying, "Oh no, I will never do this. I will never ever do this." But she was made to do it by her friends in her committee. Nobody told her you have to, but her friend said, "Come on, you can manage this, you know." And when she did it and she came off the zip line, she said, "If I can manage this, I can manage anything in my life." And I thought, yes, that's it.
How did you come up with Imagine as an anthem?
We didn't actually come up with it. It was the first song that was played in the Euro concert in Fontainebleau in 1988. At the end of the concert, he played Imagine, and all of a sudden everybody started singing it. They got the lighters out and were waving their lighters, like a candle, and it stayed with EYP for many years.
Talking to Bettina, it was just so clear how EYPers and the EYP itself were seen as forerunners, both for their methodology and the idea they proposed.
Dutch MEP coming to speak at the Barcelona session in 1992. And she walked into that was in the Catalan parliament. And she walked in, she observed the debate, and she said, "These are not normal young people." I said, "How do you mean?" She said, "But they couldn't do that, they can't do that." I said, "Yes, but they are doing it." And she couldn't get over it. Funny thing is that some of the resolutions which were passed in the 90s were passed in the European Parliament about 7 or 8 years later. They should have listened to us, because the ideas of young people were very bright, very good, and they deserve to be heard.
I want to ask if you had the biggest dream also for EYP to become something in, let's say, even 10, 20, 50 years. Would you have any big ideas where EYP could go even further, or when you were setting it up, what was your big universe idea?
My next idea was to ask observers to come from countries which are not democracies, and not just from Europe. But that's quite difficult. I tried it, but it was too expensive. I couldn't carry on with it. Countries from North Africa and close to Europe to start with, and to see because it's the young generation who will have to look after that country and be in government and be in top positions in trade and commerce, etc. So once they know how to do certain things, the better it will be.
From 1987 and still to this day, the pillars of the EYP haven't changed that much. This is in no way a bad thing, seeing as our base is incredibly strong and resilient. We have built upon it quite a bit, expanding it day by day, but it stably carries the future very well.
Long live EYP, the longer it can go on and the better it can become for so many young people. Congratulations to all of you for taking it forward. Thank you very much.